Hey, Jim, back with you again for another morning devotional. This today is going to be, it's going to be a really tough one because it is straightforward, honest, direct, in your face, in all of our faces. It is presenting the world around us as it is, and what's even more difficult, presenting the hearts around us the way they are. And sometimes it's very difficult to see because you may have a lot of people that you know and love and care about. And you may have whole communities that engage in a lot of what we're going to see today. And we're going to hear from Peter. This is 2 Peter chapter 2, 10 to 19. It is a continuation from yesterday. Of course, we always go verse by verse, line by line through the scriptures. But today is a long one, so we're going to forego the worship again. I apologize for skipping a lot of it, but there was no way to break this. I didn't even know what I was going to do because there's so much here in the next 2 days. And there's so many good things that are not in between the lines being said, but there is. There's so much being said here. So many nuances that I wish I had time just to go through this to the depth that I really want to go through this, but I don't. We're trying to get this done in about 20 minutes, and it's a lot. So we're going to just get into read it. I'm going to read it, and what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to do something a little different. I'm not going to read it first and then go back through it. I'm just going to go through it because it's pretty self-explanatory, and it's a continuation from yesterday where we talked about basically the ungodly being preserved for the day of judgment. And this is going to give a lot of the characteristics of what's going on in their heart. And it's kind of like looking under a rock. And you know what? We possess some of these, I'm sure. If you're a disciple of Christ, hopefully you are. You're saved by the blood, and we know that we're saved, but we need to improve. We need to mature. And you may have been like this. So we're not throwing stones at anyone. We're just praying and hoping that if you're like this, or maybe you're a person who says you're a disciple of Jesus and you're not, and you'll know it pretty quick. And we want you to come to Jesus, want you to repent. We should always be in a constant state of repentance in our hearts because we have at any one time. It says, be careful lest you stand, when you think you stand, lest you fall. In other words, you think you're standing and then all of a sudden you fall, you trip. So just know that. So we're going to read it and I'm going to go over it line by line. And you're going to see pretty quickly how heavy this is. But I'm going to stop and I'm going to just give you some explanations about the level of basically depravity. I don't know how else to say it. So if you're one of these that doesn't know Jesus and you do have a lot of these qualities, and look, I'm not saying you get every one of them. If you have any one of these qualities, as we all do, we're destined for hell. But by the blood of the Lamb, we're saved. So we all need that blood of the Lamb. We all need Jesus. That's where salvation comes. But it does expose a lot of what's going on. And I'll be honest, if you don't look. What's great about YouTube or Facebook is that you can watch this in the privacy of your home or your privacy of yourself, and you're the only eyes, and maybe you have you got your earplugs in and you can listen to this, and it's really convicting and no one else knows what you're watching, and you're feeling like a weight is being pressed on your heart. That's because it's real. That's because the Bible is the best interpreter of our heart. Pay attention to it. I don't think you're here by accident. Pay attention to these things. So let's get into it, and let's see what the Lord has for us today. Okay, let me get my glasses on here. I had to make the type smaller because there's that much information here, and I could not cut it any shorter. So he's going on here from above, and he's up in here. This is from yesterday. So put that line there. The day of judgment, you'll see that. I couldn't fit anything in here. He says this, and he's still talking about those who are just sinful and just be in the world. He talked about the days of Noah and the ungodly and Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah. He talked about that previously. Now he's saying this. He says, and especially, and he's even pointing out, and especially those who indulge in the flesh and its corrupt desires and despise what? Authority. Goodness gracious. Right there, we get started right in that. All right, indulge in the flesh. This is sexual immorality, a big one, right? That's the main thing he's talking about here, okay? And that is the greatest corruption, right? A lot of adultery going on, the destruction of families. It's happening all over. But not only that, it's our ears. We want to be talked to. We want to be patted on the head. We want to be stroked on the back. We want to be thought of as famous. We want to be thankful as something special, when all our specialty comes from God. And he talks about the corrupt desires, and we despise authority. Do you see this in the world around you? People don't want to be told anything. The police, nothing. The military, whatever it is, they despise it. This includes the big authority, God. They don't want God, okay? And he says they're daring, they're self-willed. They do not tremble when they revile angelic. In other words, they're so against authority. And the angels, even the angels, they revile angelic majesties, even things of the supernatural. Now, they're not aware of it. And they're in the flesh, they may be giving excuses, but they revile angelic majesties. Anything with authority. He says they're self-willed, they're daring. They actually will, if you will, they'll be risk takers. Say, I don't need to listen to this. I don't need to be controlled by God. Who is he? That's what this is. And then it says this, and these are, whereas angels who are greater in might and power do not bring a reviling judgment against them before the Lord. What is he saying? He's saying that they have a bit of, for some reason, I don't know if it's called grace, but I'm going to call it that. They don't, in other words, they revile the power of God. They revile his created beings. You know, the angelic majesties are the things that God put in place. I mean, do you get what I'm saying? God put these angelic ministries in place. So when they revile the angelic ministries because they don't like God, they're rejecting God himself almost. And what do the angels do in return? They do not judge them. They do not judge them. Well, number one, in other words, they're not going to the Lord and saying, hey, look at this guy. Look at this woman. Look how they are treating you or how they're treating us. They revile us, right? And yet they don't do that. Why? Well, because we're made in God's image. That's why. Okay, and that's something that's not here, but that's one of the main reasons. We're made in the image of God. And that's a big deal to the angels. Okay? Where we have a certain status. It even says in the end days, we will judge the angels, us. So there's a certain honor that they have for us. It's kind of like if you could imagine you live in a kingdom and the prince has done something, you're a worker or an employee, and the prince has done something really bad. You don't go to the king and say, this is what your son did. Okay? You know your place. Okay, so that's kind of the same kind of idea. All right, let's go back to it. And he says, I'm going to get my glasses on a minute. He says, but this is us. These are the people with the corrupt desires, right? Self-willed people, right? The ungodly, that's everyone who does not know Jesus. I want to be clear. Everyone who does not know Jesus. But these, like unreasoned animals, born as creatures of what? Instinct, to their primal desires, right? Sexual desires and these sorts of things. No thinking, they just react. To be what? Captured and killed. I mean, I don't know what else to say. captured. What's their goal? What's their end result? Be captured and killed. I don't know what else you could say. He's talking about those who don't know Jesus, the ungodly, the unrighteous. That's who he's talking about. I can show you if I wish I can go back here, I go back up to yesterday. This is what he's talking about. Nothing beyond that. Okay? They are reviling these people where they have no knowledge. They don't know, they don't understand. What does this allude to? Let me tell you what this alludes to. You remember when Jesus was on the cross and he's hanging on the cross? And what does Jesus say? Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Now, wait a minute. They're killing him. They know what they're doing. They're putting him on the cross. They're torturing him. They mocked him. They put him to death. They knew what they were physically doing, but they did not know what they do because they did not know what they were against. They did not know that this is God. They did not know that they are reviling Jesus, God himself. And Jesus is just pleading, Father, forgive him, because he knows the wrath of the Father is going to be, well, I don't even want to talk about how bad it'll be. Okay? Okay. They have no knowledge. Will in their destruction of those creatures to be destroyed. Okay? They're just going to be destroyed, and they have no understanding of that. Suffering wrong as the wages of doing wrong. Right? So now he's talking about they're going to suffer wrong because that's the wages. It's almost like the wages of sin is death. Same kind of idea here, right? They're suffering wrong as the wages of doing wrong. They're going to suffer for what they're doing here on earth, but then, of course, in the end times. And then it says here, they count it a pleasure to revile in the daytime. Okay? They are stains, blemishes, reviling in their deceptions. They're deceptive. They carouse with you. These are people who will, if you want to engage with them, the ungodly, they will be more than happy to be part of it with you. If that's your direction, they want to do it. Now, if your direction is righteousness, they don't want any part of that. They want to revile. They want to carouse with you. What is it? Having eyes full of what? This is that sin, right? Full of adultery that never cease from sinning. Enticing. Here's another one. There's so many nuggets in here, brothers and sisters, folks. Enticing unstable souls. What does that mean, unstable souls? Right? Think about that. Why is it? These are people who are not grounded in Jesus, grounded on the rock. They're unstable in all their ways. Right? They're in this 1 minute, the next they're going to try money, they're going to try fame, they're going to try sex, they're going to try women, they're going to try men, they're going to try whatever it is. They're unstable, right? And that's who the people are enticed by. They're enticing them, particularly those who don't have a parent, don't have a way. Think of people who join gangs. Think of people who just join these organizations, right? They do it because they're unstable. Why? Because of their upbringing or because whatever, right? Same idea. And here we go. It gets even better, if you could say that. Having a heart trained in greed and accursed children. These are people who are just, as you can see, they have had a lifetime of being taught in these things. They're accursed. In other words, means accursed is they are essentially destined for hell. Unless Jesus. I told you this is going to be a tough one. Forsaking the right way, they have gone astray. Forsaking. In other words, I don't even want to go that way. I see it. I don't want to deal with that, right? That's what I don't want to deal with, right? I've forsaken the right way. I've gone astray. And have followed the way, and this is a big one, of Baal. These are evil. This is evil spirits or evil idols or even evil itself, the son of Beor, right? who loved this evil loves the wages of unrighteousness. In other words, the results, the payout would be a good way to look at it. The payout of unrighteousness. Evil loves that, right? Evil wants you to suffer for your consequences of sin. Evil just doesn't relish the sin. It relishes the consequence of your sin. So if you're living in torment, living in this world, right? You're living in a world you destroyed your life, you committed adultery, you lost your family, you lost your children, so on and so forth. Evil loves that. Evil celebrates that, right? Loved, it says the word is, right? It loves that you suffer the consequences. Why? Because you're tormented, because evil hates you. It's the most bizarre thing in the world. You would think that evil loves you because it wants to be with you. No, evil wants you to be part of evil, and it loves to hate you. That's the truth of it, okay? All right. But he received a rebuke for his own transgression. For a mute donkey spoke with the voice of a man, restrained the madness of a prophet. Okay, this is kind of, I'm not going to get into this a whole lot because it's kind of off into the Old Testament and that sort of thing. I'm not going to skip it. I'm just not going to speak on it that well. He's just, again, pointing to the wages of unrighteousness. I'll just say that, okay? These are springs, and this is good, without water, and a mist driven by a storm, for whom black darkness has been reserved. Okay? These are springs without water. Now, what does this allude to? Okay? This alludes to almost, if you will, water that doesn't quench you. Okay? He talks about mist driven by a storm. Why does he use those words? Mist driven by a storm. Let me ask you a question. If you're dying of thirst and is mist driven by a storm, is it going to quench your thirst? Even though it's like mist, like fog? No. You can't. There's nothing there. It's almost a vapor, right? Same sort of thing. Springs without water. Okay? Now, what does this allude to? What does Jesus say to the woman by the well? He says, I bring you water that you'll never, when you partake of this water, you will never thirst again. Right? This is a complete contradiction. Jesus says, I am the water. I am the living water. If you drink from me, you will never thirst again. And here he's saying, no, these people are engaging in springs that have no water and mist driven by a storm, for whom, and let's get into it. Let me show you. For whom the black darkness has been reserved. This is hell. In other words, you can't think of it this. I think there's a thing with Lazarus, and he says, hey, he dies, and he says, can you just put some water on my tongue? My tongue is burning, because he can't quench his tongue because it's on fire. Same idea, right? It's all alluding to the same idea. You can never nothing to be satisfied. This is the ultimate thing in hell. And I want to point to this out because some of us might be going there. And you need to know how horrible it is. You see, in hell, there's eternal torment. But it's more than just being tormented and abused, if you will. And that's such a horrible thing. It's eternal regret. Eternal regret. If you've ever done something that's so regretful and you just... that's the gnashing of teeth. If you ever hear it, I wish I would have never did that. I wish I would have listened to this gospel of Jesus Christ. I wish I would have accepted Jesus. I wish I would have went to that church. I wish I would have followed my sister or brother or mother who told me to go. I wish I would have opened my ears. I wish I wouldn't have been so angry. I hope it's too late. That is the essence of hell. And now I am in eternal judgment, ongoing. I don't mean to be dark, but you have to understand what it means. Where you cannot be quenched. And life, an eternity of not being quenched. You just need to know that. That's what we're playing with. It's more than just fire. It's emotional. It's physical. It's obviously spiritual. Because you will know that you could have been in the presence of God for eternity. And instead you're not. You're just not. You're not where he is, the lover of your soul. And you need to know that. Okay. And he says this, he says, for whom black darkness has been reserved, for speaking out arrogant words of vanity, they entice by fleshly desire. Is not that the case? Right? They entice by sensuality. Okay? Goodness gracious, it goes on and on and on. Okay. Super Bowl, if you watch that on TV or whatever you watch it on, or you see some actress or you see some famous person or you watch a singer or whatever it is, how do they entice? By fleshly desires, by sensuality. That's how they entice you. They entice you to pull you away from righteousness, pull you into the world of the ungodly. You say, no, I can watch both. No, you can't. You can't do both. Either you're God's or you're not. There is no middle ground. If you're in the middle ground, you're on their side. There is no middle ground. Okay? All right. By sensuality, those who barely escape from the ones who live in error. What do? They promise them freedom while they themselves are what? They're slaves of corruption. So they are saying this. Again, oh goodness, I could just do this for hours. They are saying, hey man, you're free. Come be with me. Let's go have fun. Let's go do the fun things. Right? You're free. You can do whatever you want to do. Right? And ultimately, there's no freedom at all because the ones that are enticing you, they themselves are slaves of corruption. They're slaves. They're in bondage to it. Right? That's what it means. And he says this is great. My goodness. It's so fantastically worded. It's not a fantastic thing, but it's fantastically worded. For by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. If you could put anything on your mirror or on your car or on your bicycle or whatever it is you ride, if you could post a scripture to remind you of something on your phone, this is it. Actually, right here. For by what a man is overcome, by this he's enslaved. For by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. When this overcomes you, you are then enslaved to it, whether it be sexual pornography or whether it be power or fame or pursuit of riches or pursuit of being noted or notable person or being powerful in the sense that I have a influence. By what you are overcome with, if you're overcome with that thing, you're now turned and enslaved to it, where you have to keep doing it. That's what he's talking about. You can't break out. Okay, now tomorrow it's going to continue in this thought. I just didn't know where to break it. It's going to continue it. And I get it. And we're going to end the chapter, I think, tomorrow. But I just want to say, these are negative. They sound really, really negative. And I understand that. I understand the negativity of it, right? I get the negativity of this. But I want you to be aware, it's not negative in the sense for those who knew Jesus. You may be sad, you may be discouraged, you may have a lot of hope for the world and the people you love and care about. But know this, your major thing, number one, is to be fed, to abide in Christ, to be healthy in the Lord, so you then can be the voice of Christ to them, or be light. You don't want your light being dimmed, brothers and sisters, disciples of Christ. You want your light to be bright, and you have to know these schemes of the devil, schemes of the world. You must know them, because this light is what's going to be the guiding lighthouse, if you will, to their life. When they're in darkness, they don't know which way they're going, but you're standing there as a light for them. Just by the way you live, not even preaching to them, just being built on the rock, on the foundation of Christ. You're there. So you need to know these things. You need to not run from them. You need to soberly look at them to build you up as a mature man and woman for Jesus, because you may be the only people in the entire world that the person in front of you ever sees representing God. And that's the fact. I encourage you, don't run from these passages. Run to them and examine your own heart and constantly be on the battle lines. This is how you fight evil in the spiritual world. Going to Jesus, prayer, digging in his word. Why is it in his word? Because he wants us to know it. That's why it's in his word. Okay? It isn't pure condemnation. It's knowing the playing field. The playing field of the heart, the playing field of the world. So anyway, I hope this has been really good for you. It has been for me. It's tough to hear, particularly for those of you who have some of these mercy gifts and everything else. I know it's hard, but don't worry. We're in this together. We're here to bring everyone to the finish line of Christ. So be encouraged. God bless you. Until we talk again tomorrow.